Hi everyone, welcome to the class. So today we will be continuing from where we had left in the last lecture, that is demand forecasting. So the point is, when we talk about forecasting, it is very evident that a wrong forecasting can be very dangerous, right? And a proper forecasting can be extremely helpful for any company or organization. So what exactly forecasting is? We had said that it is a technique that uses historical data as inputs to make informed estimates that are predicted or predictive in determining the future trends. So, the past data is used in order to understand the future. So, let us say take an example. Now, let us say the country, everybody is saying that the world would see a recession, right. Now, how is it, on what basis are they saying? How are they predicting, or what basis are they forecasting that a recession might be sooner or later coming into the global economy? Now, to understand this, maybe what we have to do is we have to look at last recessions when it had happened. For example, the 2008 crisis, and before that whenever crisis recessions have happened, we need to take that data and try to find out what was the inflationary condition of the the various countries, what kind of wages were there, what happened to the production systems, what happened to the entire supply chain systems around the world. Now, by taking all these various factors, as I said, inflation, wage, right, production, productivity factors, production, right, the factors of production. By counting all this into taking into action, now let us take the 2008 crisis and the beforehand, then companies would be able to predict, or markets or governments can be able to predict, that because of a nearby situation, that is a situation which is similar to those times is present today, maybe we can also see a future a recession coming in the nearby time. So, basically what forecasting is doing is nothing but it is trying to look at the past data and try to analyze the future. Okay. So, it helps in profit forecasting. Obviously, if you have done a right forecasting for a company, for example, let us say if it has done a right demand forecasting, it can create a proper infrastructure, create infrastructure, okay. Then it can get its raw materials in right time and the right quantity and all. So, this will help the company and also to produce those items which are in demand, right. So, now with the help of this, what happens, automatically the company tends to gain more profit, right. So, a better demand forecasting, inventory forecasting will help, and even a web trafficking, which is nowadays very popular in the B2B world, where you try to find out how social media, people are using social media. For example, if you look at today how the music industry has changed, I was watching a program and I was from there I got this idea when I saw how music industry has changed and how new companies, startups like which have now become unicorn, obviously Spotify and all, how they have revolutionized this industry. So, how forecasting has helped them, right, to move from one product category to the completely different product category. So, forecasting helps us to see the future, to visualize the future basically, okay. So, in case you want to see that Netflix program, that is playlist, so you can see that where it talks about the the story of Spotify. Now, the types of forecasting methods that we are talking about is basically two methods. One is quantitative methods and the qualitative methods. So, quantitative methods, as the as it says, depends on the numbers. So, what kind of numbers you have in your hand. So, for example, let us say a company says, the steel manufacturers are saying, right, what is the sales that had happened in 2015, 16, 17 goes on till 2022. So, what is the steel demand, right, and what was the price of steel for each year. Let us say they can quote the price for steel each year. So, by understanding this demand in quantity, this price and all that the people were global players were asking for, the company can forecast how much should they produce, what kind of steel should they produce, which one, which applications or which industries will have more of demand. So, they can accordingly forecast and accordingly segment and target their markets. Okay. The other method is more qualitative in nature, where you do not have maybe the data or the data that is there in your hand, is something that you can't rely upon, because there are certain subjective measures or certain non quantitative measures which also influence the forecasting process. For example, the government's policy decision can entirely disturb your forecasting process, right. So, in such a condition, would you like to read through the numbers, or is it better to subjectively understand the government's policies and its effect on demand forecasting for a company? Now, let us imagine, for example, the dollar is becoming stronger in comparison to the rupee at the moment. So, Indian rupee. So, in such a condition, there are some companies who are export oriented, they would gain. For example, the let us say the software industry, right. So, suppose the government takes, let us say two cases, 1 and 2. So, government takes action to control that dollar and rupee value, and the government leaves it to the open market as a free flow. So, in one condition, if the government is taking, the RBI is taking action, then the industries which were largely dependent on software export and they were gaining because of a of the rupees depreciation, now they would feel the heat, because this is not going to be good for them. But if the dollar appreciates as per the open market, let us say, and the government is not taking any action on this, then these people are going to benefit. But let us say some other industries, for example chemicals, on the contrary. Now, the chemical industry imports a lot of raw materials from various countries, let us say African countries, China and all. So, now for them, when the dollar is appreciating, the import cost is becoming more and more. So, in such a condition, how would they feel the heat because of that? So, when we rely on such subjective opinions from various experts, we call it as a qualitative method. So, the qualitative methods, we will get into both, but let us start with the qualitative methods. So, there are 5 methods which we will be largely discussing. So, the 5 methods that we are going to discuss are: first is the Delphi method, then we will talk about panel consensus method, right, historical analogy, Salesforce composite and market research. So, let us see what these techniques talk about, right. So, all we know they are qualitative methods. So, let us start with the first method, which is Delphi. Now, Delphi is a process used to arrive at a group opinion or decision by surveying a panel of experts. Now, what does it say? So, what you are doing here is, you are trying to first you select a number of experts of the topic of interest. For example, the topic of interest for us is, let us say, energy requirement, let us say. So, we want to study on what would be the energy requirement in by 2050, right. We want to study this. So, to do this, first of all, I can't make anybody my respondent, right. I need to have an expert, and that expert also has to be from the relevant field of energy or policy making. Now, I may get people from various walks of life. For example, let us say Ministry of Energy, let us say, right, the Ministry of Renewable Energy, right, and then we will have people from various fields like let us say National Thermal Power Corporation, right. So, or many other private companies like Tata Power, right. So, what we are doing is, we are selecting maybe our respondents on from various fields, and largely who have certain knowledge about this industry and about the energy condition, right. So, the experts respond to several rounds of questionnaire. So, what we do, first we have an idea, now we build a questionnaire. So, after having that idea, what needs to be asked to those experts, so we have to have a questionnaire in our mind, right. So, we develop this questionnaire. Then what we do is, we go to the experts, right, and obviously there are people who would facilitate this process, who are called as facilitators, right. So, this questionnaire, now what will happen, will be sent or given to those experts who are from this field of energy, and now the answer would be collected from them. So, what happens here? Experts respond to several rounds of questionnaire. So, the first round is over, and the answers are collected from the experts, and then the facilitators or the people who are involved in this research process, what they will do is they will try to summarize this different responses and then put forward some more questions which can be brought out from this discussion. So that whatever the people have responded from that, by understanding them, maybe a new question will emerge and they will again send it to those respondents, and these responses are aggregated. So, they are submitted and shared with the group after each round. So, there is round 1, let us say you collected the responses, and then after collecting the responses you felt ki there is, you want to ask about a particular area, about let us say the energy price. Now, what is the opinion about all these respondents? So, again you send to those respondents and talk about maybe one or few factors, right, and take their opinion. Now, what happens is many of these respondents, maybe a few are, let us say out of let us say 50 respondents are there, let us say 40 are agreeing to one thing and 10 are not agreeing. So, again the respondents would be asked, maybe this is what others also feel, what is your opinion about it? So, now the respondents opinion is retaken and the questions are redesigned maybe according to the requirement, and then we try to get into a unanimity. So, at the end of the study we try to see what kind of responses are coming. So, are they coming to a unanimous result or not, right. So, Delphi technique is very useful for those subjects, those studies where you do not have any much of expertise, and here the experts from the field are the best people to work with. So, step 1, as it says, various experts are asked to answer independently and in writing a series of questions about the future of sales or whatever other area is being forecasted. So, our area was energy requirement or energy forecasting. So, in step 2 what we are doing, a summary of all the answers is then prepared. Suppose we said there were 50 respondents. So, the answers collected from these 50 respondents is then submitted. No expert knows how any other expert answered the question. So, that the answer is not leaked, or there is nothing is told to what others have said, right. In step 3 what happens, copies of the summary are given to the individual experts. So, the summary reports are given to all these 50 experts with the request that they may modify their original answers if they think it is necessary. So, in this step the summary report is given, and from the summary report the maybe somebody is was differing earlier. Now, he might change his original decision, but no pressure is put on that, right. So, what happens in the fourth step? Then one more another summary report is made after the new responses are collected, and the copies are again distributed to the experts. So, this time however, expert opinions that deviate significantly from the norm must be justified in writing. So, suppose some experts opinion are very much different, let us say somebody says energy requirement in the country will go up, let us say out of 50, 45 people have said that or 40 people have said that, but 10 people are saying no, energy requirement will come down. Now, why? They have their own maybe reasons for that, right. So, in that condition, so what happens is we get that very different answers that somebody is giving, we try to collect it in the form of writing and they have to justify that. Then a third summary is made of the opinions and the justifications. So, first round, second round, third round, and copies are once again distributed to the experts. Justification in writing for all answers is now required, right. And in step 6, the forecast is generated from all of the opinions and justifications that arise from this step, step 5. So, by adopting this method, what happens is because of the rounds of discussion that has happened and people are now able to change their opinion, and finally, we come to very a close unanimous kind of a situation, and whatever if it is not unanimous also it is okay, but we may come to a situation where there is an unanimous decision, and finally, on basis of the last response we predict the or forecast the future. Okay. So, this is how it looks like. Define the problem, invite your participants, create your initial questionnaire, then distribute the initial questionnaire, collect the respondents, right, the responses, prepare feedback and summary report and all, distribute the feedback or summary report and questionnaire again to the respondents, just see if there is any consensus or not. If there is any, if there is a consensus, they are all speaking in the same language, then you can prepare the final results. But if no, then collect the responses, prepare feedback, that summary report, again a new summary report, and redesign the questionnaire, again send it back to the respondents, and this process goes on till we feel that now no more benefits can be drawn out of the study, right. So, this is the Delphi method, a very popular method done with small number of respondents, not a very large number of respondents, and they are all experts from the different fields of interest. Okay. Practical examples, sales forecasting for a new drilling machine, for example, prediction of automation trends and upgradations like customer support, chatbots, right, through AI and artificial intelligence, machine learning. So, when, or as I said, energy, demand for certain kind of new goods. So, this will all be part of the Delphi method. The next qualitative approach is panel consensus. Now, that looks like again Delphi. Now, what it is, what is this method? Panel consensus is a qualitative forecasting technique that brings all the internal experts of an organization together for an open discussion and consensus on the product or services that is of interest to the researcher. So, the panel of experts are encouraged to communicate and discuss the matters in relation to the future prospects of what is to be predicted. Now, let us say we are a producer of, let us say some kind of renewable goods, right, renewable solar, let us say solar based water heaters or something. Now, the company wants to know what would be the future of this. So, the experts are encouraged to communicate freely and discuss matters that can affect the demand of the product. So, anyone may speak up, and the meeting will end when a consensus is again reached. So, let us say few people give one opinion, and the remaining give a different opinion. So, whatever the majority is saying, it is not about majority, a logical conclusion has to be drawn, and but this is between the internal members. Delphi was being done with experts from various different companies, different organizations, different maybe professional fields, but here we are talking about one organization. So, internal experts of the organization, right, and then we try to see if a consensus is reached finally. Okay. Practical examples. So, generating ideas regarding new product market capture. So, a company wants to enter into the new market. For example, let us say Bajaj Auto wants to enter into the, let us say into a new market. Let us say they are developing or Hero Motors, whatever, for example, they are developing electrical scooters right now or electrical vehicles, and they want to enter into a new territory. So, what kind of problems they might face, what could be the challenges, how much of demand can be expected from the market, because according to the demand that is expected only you can produce at the back end, no. So, if your demand forecasting is wrong, then you may either produce too much or too less. So, the inventory will not be according to the requirement of the market. So, that can be a challenge. The quantity of company's product that is likely to sell in a year. So, the annual demand is something that we are talking about here, annual demand. Okay. Then we have historical analogy, another qualitative method. Now, as the word you can understand from the word historical analogy. So, historical analogy is a forecasting method that uses additional information from similar groups of products and services, right, to make a more accurate forecast than what can be done with a single series or judgment alone. Now, what does it mean? Now, if you look at historical analogy, it says that suppose there might be cases when you do not have any demand or any data about a product, right. So, in such a condition, what is the best way? The best way is to try to find a similar situation or a similar market where, let us say, a company wants to enter into Indian market. Now, they have no idea how the Indian market would react to. So, what they do is they try to go to some closer markets, some markets which are very similar in behavior to the Indian market. For example, let us say they try to reach out to the Bangladesh market, because after all Bangladesh was a part of India at one point of time. So, the culture and habits are more or less same, and they would go to the Nepalese, see the Nepal market, the Bhutan market, the neighboring states largely, right. Or it is not necessary all the time, it could be neighboring only. Sometimes the culture can be similar with even a country which is far off. So, depending on some similar markets or similar products in the market, they can try to compare, right. So, historical analogy has been largely used to forecast, situations in the situations that can happen, right. For example, as I started the class with a recession kind of situation, right. So, historical analysis will be able to guide you through to find out what can happen in the future. So, the past data helps you to understand the future. For example, let us say when companies went through a COVID situation, right. So, COVID was one pandemic that happened, and then that is one off event kind of situation. Now, everybody has learned to or has to learn to live with it, right. But what if tomorrow another situation would come, right? A new virus or is spread. Suppose we pray that does not happen, but suppose, then what happens is we go back to that historical situation where in the past it has happened, and what did the governments do? The best example, yeah, that can come to my mind at this moment is the disaster mitigation team, disaster mitigation team that works against cyclones and in Orissa, for example. Now, these teams, now they are experts in understanding or predicting cyclones and predicting kind of those kind of situations, and now the support of these teams are being taken up by other states in the country who are maybe the coastal the states around the coastal belt, who also can face similar situations. They are taking support of these teams, the disaster mitigation teams from Odisha, right, because somehow the Odisha government was very successful, in handling this. So, one time there was a very big cyclone and there was a natural disaster in I think 1999, but after that Odisha was able to somehow manage the cyclones, and they read it well and they handled it very effective manner. So, here that historical analogy comes to play, right. So, you may use the same example for a demand forecasting of a company also, right. Now, the next thing in the qualitative analysis is Salesforce composite. Now, you see, there is no doubt that the people closest to the customers are the Salesforce people, right. And these Salesforce people not only understand about the demand of the product in the market, but also understand the possible trends in the market and the consumer behavior, their habits and everything, right. So, the Salesforce composite utilizes the feedback obtained from the sales group in order to forecast the demands of the customer. Now, it helps in connecting with the people, the consumers, and passing on this information to the maybe the marketing and sales division of the company, who then pass it on to the other divisions, and then a discussion and a new policy is framed, or a new forecasting is done. So, Salesforce composite is a very effective method, because that gives a very realistic picture. They work as the intelligence system for any company, right. Now, the Salesforce composite method is called a bottom up approach, where the sales force gives their opinion on the sales trend to the top management. Also, obviously, so the people closest to the consumers. So, let us say the people closest to these are the customers and this is the sales force. So, the sales force is closest, right, and here is the top management who is taking the decision, right, top management. So, in between the top management and the customer, so the policy maker, basically he is the policy maker and he is the user. So, in between is the sales force who is implementing, right. So, implementing. So, now because these people have a very clear, very rich idea about the market, they help the top management in taking a very clear decision about how the users are moving, what their financial conditions are, what their traditionally what changes they are happening, going through, what is the influence of various maybe social media tools or various new kind of products that is available in the market, how that is influencing them. So, all these things are coming through this Salesforce. So, since the salesmen are the people who are very close to the market, as it is written also, can give a more accurate sales prediction on the basis of their experience with the direct customers. The last technique is market research, which is one of the most popular forecasting methods. Now, it helps in forecasting future demand through surveys, right, through customer surveys, and by take asking customers, meeting them, asking them to fill up maybe a questionnaire, or you may just observe them, right. So, observing the respondents or the customers, how they are behaving in a retail shop or in a buying store, in a store. So, this technique assists business in introducing a new product to the market, or trying to enter into a new market, or trying to bring in new designs into the market. So, all this is very helpful if market research is properly done. So, what happens in this marketing research is basically, if we see, let us go through. So, there are a few steps, right. So, it starts with the problem identification. Now, market research process starts with identifying a problem. Now, what is the problem? The problem could be that customers are not buying. Sometimes there is a confusion between cause and symptom, right. So, the problem and the symptom. Symptom might be profits are falling, but what is the problem actually? The problem is people are not buying the product, right. So, what is the problem in hand? So, that is to be identified, and once the problem is identified, almost you have got a very clear idea about what is the situation and how it has to be dealt with. Then we try to formulate an approach. So, what is the best approach to tackle to this problem, right? So, the company tries to understand which is the best approach. Maybe we can follow a survey, or a observational method. We can go for a action based research, right. So, maybe the company what it does is it allows some people to behave as ghost shoppers or mystery shoppers, and these people will go into the shops and behave as customers and try to read what others are doing, right, what the other consumers, customers are doing in the shop. Now, this kind of approaches are very helpful, right. Then the research design. So, in this research design, what we do is we try to find out who would be my sample, how many samples are required, for example, right. What is it an exploratory research, what kind of research process you want to adopt. Now, would you like to test some hypothesis, or you want to get some research question answered. So, the research design talks about even what kind of scales need to be used while collecting the information from the respondents. So, basically what it is doing is it is trying to create the research design, and the research design is sometimes called as the blueprint, right. So, it is the blueprint of the research process. So, it is a map of the research process, right. So, after this what happens, you collect the data. So, at this stage you start collecting the data, and the data collection process goes on in a primary mode, maybe through by visiting to the respondent, or trying in a, as I said, in a hidden manner, in a disguised format. Then the data is processed, the data is processed, and after the data is collected and then processed, and then finally the researcher tends to read the data, analyze the data. So, for example, let us say uh, Big Bazaar, right. Big Bazaar is finding that people are not buying. So, Big Bazaar wants to, let us give an example. This is not maybe a good example, just imagine a situation. So, Big Bazaar feels that the sales in a particular month is coming down, right. Now, what do? They try to conduct a research survey and try to find out why people are not buying maybe in this particular time period, why the sales is coming down. And interestingly, they find that the sales actually is not coming down, but the sales is reducing for the kind of products that Big Bazaar is selling, right. So, what kind of products are in demand then? Then Big Bazaar finds out from the survey that few other kinds of products are more in demand, because that is a need due to some celebration, due to some festival, and as a part of the tradition. So, some more other products are in demand, but the products that is there in the shelf of Big Bazaar at this moment, they are not in demand. So, in such a situation, what happens? Big Bazaar understands this, and after that what it does is it tries to either bring in the new products, so that the people can come in and buy these products from Big Bazaar, and automatically as they buy those products, maybe the other products also can get a facelift. The people may also try out on the other products, right. So, as a result, what happens, the overall sales might increase. Okay. So, market research process is a very important process, and companies have adopted this technique for a long period of time, and it has been very helpful because it tells you what level of accuracy you can also achieve, right. So, sometimes we go with a gut feeling, which is maybe very dangerous. So, forecasting done on a gut feeling is sometimes as illogical as possible, and that can be very, very dangerous. So, through this marketing research process, what happens is the companies are in a position to understand the behavior of the customers and the kind of demand that will be generated, and thus this information helps the top management of the company, right. So, what are the challenges now? So, there are few challenges with the marketing research in the B2B industry. Now, B2B industry being having a very different kind of orientation and behavior, some of the challenges that you face is for example, who is the relevant respondent, who is the right respondent. So, that is a challenge. Now, B2B industries, they are basically, they work on the background, and they do not interact with the end customers directly. There is no need for that, right. So, B2B marketers would produce something, and then that would be used by the B2C companies, and B2C companies, maybe they are in direct contact with the end consumers. So, here finding who is the right respondent could be a challenge, right. And then getting attention and time is also a challenge, because the people who are responsible or who can be of use, they are in a very important position and they are very busy, and this market being a very rational market, the time available with these people is very limited, right, and they do not want to waste that time. Another problem that B2B marketers have, or research in the B2B market has, is the willingness to share information. Now, just imagine, why would a B2B marketer tell you what is the price of the product? Now, pricing in the B2B market is a very different kind of pricing, because most of the products are customized and nobody has an accurate a price index, or a idea about the price. So, why should the companies share? Because after all, they can earn more profits by adjusting the prices. So, the willingness to share information about the raw material cost, the prices of the products and all, they are relatively very different. What about technology, what technology they are using? Why should anybody be sharing with us? So, this is again a challenge that we face. And B2B marketers, they basically, the decisions are taken in a group, which is, we have already talked about buying centers or decision making units, right, DMUs or buying centers. So, now the question is, if decision making is done in a group, so who is the right person to talk to in the group? Who is the most powerful person in the group or the decision maker in the group? And then collecting true, honest and sincere responses. Now, this is a challenge with any industry, because how would you know even that the people who have given you the response is even true or not. So, there is, what is the mechanism to check it, right. And finally, using the right tool for analysis. Now, all the time a qualitative method, quantitative method may not work, sometimes the qualitative methods are better. So, what kind of tools are we using for analyzing the data in hand is also a important measure. So, these are very few challenges that a B2B researcher faces, right. So, some of the research that I have seen in the B2B industry is technology related or supply chain driven, or demand forecasting, or even the pricing of products. Now, there actually there is challenge that you face, and getting data from the right respondents is a tough task. So, that does not mean we should be dissuaded or discouraged to do research in the B2B industry, rather that should be taken as an opportunity. That means more chances of good publication, good work is possible if you are doing a work out here, right. So, with this with this I will try to I will wind up my lecture for today. So, till then take care and meet you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.